In early times, men reasoned and had opinions about the heavenly bodies, what they were and what their purpose was. But when the truth was made known through the science of astronomy, it conflicted with the popular opinions and proved them to be errors. Science has always been fought by error in every branch of learning, but the field that has been traveled over and plowed up with the most diligence by the learned as well as the uneducated in the hope of discovering the truth is religion. Many have thought that they have found the pearl of great price, but when tested by universal application, it has failed as a truth and only remained as a belief. To discover a science which will teach man to be master of his own health and happiness is to find a truth by which man's thoughts can be tested and their character analyzed. To do this requires a new revelation of wisdom, for all tests heretofore tried have failed, and their foundation has crumbled away. Religion has been undergoing a change ever since the minds of men have been roused by scientific discoveries. Its basis has been undermined by the progress of intelligence and has been swept into the valley of despair, where its seeds have been picked up by eagles and carried to the remote parts of the land, and there dropped into the soil of man's mind, to spring up in some creed having the ancestral features of its father. The world's religion is constantly decaying, and eagles, in the form of demagogues of every kind, live on it. Jesus says, "Where the body is, there shall the eagles be gathered." So when people are ignorant and superstitious, every kind of enemy to science abounds. The effect of science on general intelligence is to destroy the influences of this class of leaders. Therefore they hate it and oppose its progress all they can. But science has conquered these enemies in every branch except in this one of man's life. And they have departed to some error which, under their husbandry, yields minds who return to society as hypocrites and demagogues, and sap the very life and virtue of the people. From the darkest ages of Grecian philosophy, there have been men who have waged war with this class of minds whom I have mentioned. You may ask me if I deny that there was such a man as Jesus. I answer no. I do not doubt that there was, any more than I doubt that there was such a man as Washington. But I have doubts that Jesus was the author of the Christian religion, or had anything to do with it. Its author lived in heathen ages, and it has been modified as science developed itself. I believe it is a stain on the character of the man Jesus. I will here give my ideas of Jesus and the introduction of Christ, which was Jesus' teacher, or the God in Jesus, or God made manifest in the flesh. At the crucifixion of Jesus, there was not much account of him. It is said Josephus speaks of him, though that is denied. Therefore there could be but very little excitement about him at that time. All we hear from him is the account gathered some years after his death. Paul's conversion took place 30 years after his death, and at that time he was so unpopular that Paul was destroyed. Go back to the Puritan fathers, and you will find the Christians hanging the Quakers and burning the witches. Still later you see these very Puritans fighting every sect differing from them. The true followers of Christ at this day are disciples of Wesley, Calvin, etc. Now their religion is a creed and nothing else, and unless you subscribe to it, you are not a follower of Jesus. Jesus was the man who brought this true light, or Christ, to light, which the priests have crucified. It came to them first, and they refused it. Then it turned to the Gentile, or scientific world, and has since then been working in the hearts of the wise, and will always, till priesthood and superstition have been blotted out of the natural man. Return with me to the days of Jesus, and see if I do not give his mission a higher character than what is claimed by the priests, and all the religious wars made by the priests. Everyone who reads the history of Jesus will see that he never intended to get up a party on his own account, but tried to enlighten the people on such subjects as would be for their happiness. The people were groaning beneath the Roman yoke, and led by the priests who ruled them by a rod of iron, robbing the widow and fatherless by pretending to pardon their sins. In fact, they were a complete engine of deception, playing upon the superstition of the masses without the least regard for the people's happiness. This was the state of the people at the birth of Jesus. Many, groaning in their captivity, were prophesying for someone to deliver them, but no one came. Now when this promise had so matured in the hearts of the people, it must come forth. A child must be born capable of receiving the science, just as it is in the discovery of any new knowledge. The discovery of America, for instance. The minds of the people must be excited so that a certain chemical change will produce a child that can receive this wisdom. So Columbus was born, not with a knowledge of his future life, but when the time came, it came forth, and the people called it America. Franklin was also born after a certain change in the soil of the mind, preparatory to the production of a new idea or science. 1800 years ago, the world had become so disturbed by their religion that a child was brought forth, to all appearances like other children, with this peculiarity. His mind was preparing to receive this great truth called Christ. But the child Jesus was as ignorant of it as Franklin, Columbus, or Fulton were of their future. All new sciences come when they are the least wanted by the wise, for they are disturbed in their position. Therefore they must expect to meet with opposition. This is as it should be, for there will arise false lights that will deceive, so there should be some way to test them. When Jesus came of age, he was informed with regard to the religion of his day. And as John the Baptist was preaching, it was not unlikely that the young man would go to hear him. As he heard him telling of a truth that would strike at the roots of this heathen wilderness, and every tree or theory that could not stand the test of such a blow must come down, he was excited then by the Holy Ghost toward this truth, and was carried up into a wilderness, where he could see all their craft and hypocrisy. Like all men who get a new idea or truth into their heads, they want to make the most of it. But there is a point where selfishness gives way to sympathy for his fellow man. This was the case with Jesus. His wisdom knew no bounds, and to cramp it would be to betray it into the hands of his enemies. To declare it would be to run the risk of his life. He came to the conclusion that it was his duty to listen to the voice of those poor sick ones, bound down in prison by the priests, and come out and separate himself by standing up and denouncing the political engine that was crushing the poor to death. His first act was to do good. So he started out and called on men who were fishing to follow him. Then he went preaching this science and proving it by his works. In this way, he saw that the priest's opinion made the people sick and affected them in many ways. So he preached the truth by showing how they had been deceived. This the people gladly received and were healed. So he cured all manner of diseases by the word of his mouth. Why should there be such a controversy in regard to the way in which Jesus cured disease? Also, what was the real object of his mission to this world? These questions naturally arise in the minds of men and bring up doubts and questionings. By some it is believed that his mission, was to save man from being lost in another world, and by others it was to reform this world. All admitted he had a power or gift superior to other men, but what it was has never been ascertained. This was the same in the days of Jesus. The same controversy was going on all the time, and in fact it has always been a mystery to the natural man. Phenomena are taking place every day, proving this power or gift, and all admit it. But it has as yet never been reduced to a science, so that it can be taught and learned. Yet its opponents speak as though it was governed by natural laws. But when asked to put these laws into practice, they get off by saying that it is nothing but mesmerism. When asked to explain mesmerism, they say it is psychology. Then if you ask what psychology is, the answer is mesmerism. So you see the world is just as wise as it was before. No person has undertaken to reduce this power to a science. Mesmer tried to explain it on the ground of electricity. Others have done the same. But not one single step has it advanced since Mesmer. Those who believe it is governed by some law attribute it to galvanism or electricity. The religious vary. The spiritualists ascribe it to the spirits of the dead. Christians, when speaking of Jesus, ascribe his miracles to the power of God. But when they speak of this power in man, they attribute it to natural causes. Some say that it is the power of the devil, others mesmerism, etc. In the days of Jesus, the people admitted it and reasoned about it just as they do now. For when Herod the king was told that Jesus was performing these cures, he said that it was John the Baptist. That is, that his spirit came and took possession of Jesus and cured diseases. That was as the spiritualists of this day believe. Others believe that it was the spirit of Moses acting through Jesus. When the Pharisees asked him where it was from, he said if they would tell him where the power of John came from, then he would tell them how he performed his cures. This they could not do. So you see, it has never been explained, nor even suggested that it could be. Now settle this one point, and do establish a basis for investigation. As it stands, it puts Jesus on the level with all of the spiritualists of his day and all ages. If it is a gift or power, why should he be called God or anything else above his followers? And if he knew how he wrought the miracles, then it is a knowledge and not a gift. And to call his wisdom a gift or a power is depriving Jesus of any knowledge superior to that of his followers. Admit it as a science that Jesus taught for the happiness of man, and then man will try to learn it. All will admit that a person can be deceived into a belief, and his belief make him sick. They will also admit that to correct his error or belief will make him well. This process is all that Jesus ever intended to convey to the world. This is a science and can be learned. Its opposers are ignorance and error. Its science is in unlearning what ignorance and superstition have bequeathed to man.